Just a quick recap. We made mention last time that when overheads are determined and they're given to the departments, you'll have them come in lump sum, like as a total. Then you know the company will have to divide this costs, the overhead costs, according to different departments that this company does have. And you will see that the indirect costs or the overhead costs themselves, they have got very specific basis of apportionment that you need. We said that the process of assigning this cost to different departments is what is called the cost apportionment, right? Overhead cost apportionment. Basically, distributing these costs that we have here, for example, a depreciation of factory repairs and maintenance, factory office costs, depreciation of equipment, insurance payment, heating, light, and canteen services. All these are just total costs that we have. Of course, total overhead costs, but they need to be shared among different, departments that we have. And we explained in the previous conversation how this process of allocation is actually done. And this is what we call cost apportionment. Now, confirm you can hear me clearly and can see the screen before we get to the conversation for the day.
Yes, sir. We can
All right,
hear you. I don't know about others, but I can hear you.
that's fine. Now, we made mention at the end of the conversation that after allocating or after doing the apportionment, right, you will notice that there will be some of the costs that will be apportioned to service departments. The services departments, they are basically supporting departments, right? Supporting departments. They are not part of the production departments. You get the point? In our case, the only production departments were just Department A and B. Those are the only departments where we had production taking place. But when you go to department number X and Y, there is no production that was taking place. These were services departments, particularly were meant to help or to assist the production departments. So now, when you have these, services department or supporting departments, I say that after doing the apportionment, you will have to get the cost that you had apportioned to these service departments, get it back into the production department, right? End of the production department, that could be A or B, right? So you are making sure that these costs, right, that you had allocated to the service centers or the supporting departments, they are helped to find their way into the factory or manufacturing departments, basically the production centers. Okay, so that's what you're doing. Now, that idea or the process of getting the cost from the service departments or supporting department into the production department is what you call overhead reapportionment. Did you get that one? That is now called the reapportionment. What you're doing at first, it was called apportionment, but again, you'll have to do what you call reapportionment, basically getting the total costs in the services or supporting departments, having all that cost to find their way into the production departments. So that's what we are trying to do now. We are doing what is called the reapportionment. All right. Now, the services departments are quite different depending on the question that you may have. Number one, you could have stores. Now, stores department is basically a service department, all right? It's a service department. Now, the most appropriate basis of apportionment for stores department is basically the number of requisitions that are made or the value of the materials used by each department. You didn't get this one. If you are given a stores department, let's say stores department was department number X, your X department was a stores department, and you had the total, after totaling up, totaling everything that you had allocated to department X, you find it to be 2,000, for example. Now, this 2,000 is under stores. What could be the best way of, basis of apportionment, or the best basis to use when you're getting this cost and taking it into the production centers, basically production center number A and B in our case. So in that case, you got to use the number of requisitions, or if you don't have the number of requisitions, you could use the value of the materials used. That is if you have the stores department. The stores department is a supporting department. It's not a manufacturing or a production center. That's clear. You could also have another, department called maintenance department. At that point, then you have to check if at all on the basis of apportionment provided you have maintenance hours. If at all you have maintenance hours, then it warrants you to use the maintenance hours to allocate, to do the apportionment of the maintenance cost as you get it into the production centers. Basically, that's what you're doing. And then you also have what we call the personnel office. Now, personnel office could be another department as well. This is also a service department. At that point, the most appropriate basis of apportionment that could be used is the number of employees. And finally, you could have the production, department of production planning. The production planning department as well is a service department. It's not a manufacturing department or production center. For that reason, if you have direct labor hours for each department, then you could use the direct labor hours to allocate all the costs that has gone to any of these departments. Maybe let me also add what may not be there. Canteen, you might have heard of canteen, right? You could have a canteen as a department, basically those people trying to cook for you so that you can have meals, as a company, right? Now that department, the canteen department, basically that is a service department as well. There is no production really taking place in that department. That department is just standing as a supporting department. For that matter, if you had allocated any cost to that department, ultimately you got to do a reapportionment of that cost back into the production centers or those departments that really carry out production. Maybe I could add another one, security, right? Security. There are those departments that dealing with security work, that is security guards, that. Yeah, that department is also a supporting department. So basically, this is the message, the compound message we are sending across. So the message that is being sent across is that as long as the cost has been apportioned to the service or supporting department, basically you'll have to consolidate the cost and then have that cost find its way into the production center or the manufacturing department. Is there any question there before we start doing now the process of reapportionment? Do I have any question? I was just trying to lay a background and help you understand what we're doing. Do you have any questions now? Can you see the screen and can you hear me clearly? Anybody can just do the confirmation, then we proceed. All right, thanks for that. Right, that's good. That's great. Then let's get to move now. The methods that are used to do the reapportionment are basically three that are examinable. You have the continuous allotment method, the direct method, and the elimination method. I repeat, we have the direct method of doing the reapportionment. We have the continuous allotment and the elimination method. These three are the ones that are quite examinable. So you hope to find these in exams or in your tests. Basically, these are major methods that are used to do the reapportionment. Now, let's have an example for ourselves, and then that should be fine. Let's have an example. Now, you have this example, you have 4 departments, yeah? 2 production centers being A and B, and 2 service centers or supporting departments, in other words, and those are being X and Y, right? So now, this is the total cost. Basically, that cost that you found when you are consolidating, remember you are consolidating vertically, right? You are doing some additions vertically, or in a column, like adding everything in that column. That's what you were doing last time. You have not gotten this. Let me get back to this, just to remind you. I said last time you had to add these costs, yeah? You had to add for department A, consolidate everything, then you find this total. For B, you consolidate everything, you add this total, right? After doing the apportionment. For X and also for Y, you do that. So now we have just extracted these last figures, okay? Nothing much has happened. You have just extracted these last figures as the total overheads. These are overheads. You've just gotten overheads for each department. And then, so get it from there. In an exam or in your assignment, basically, you will have to add everything. After consolidating these ratios, then you pick it up from there and do the reapportionment using the final figures that you find after consolidation. Okay. Now, let's have this one. So these are the overheads totaled up, yeah? Totaled up. Assume there were some figures here on top. They were totaled up, and these were totals, right? For this department. These were totals. And now, what do you need to do? I said during the process of reapportionment, you got to have all the cost that is in the service centers, basically X and Y in our case, find their way into department A and B. How is that done? Now I want you to pay attention. The question goes further and says the service departments are expected to spend their time as follows. This is the breakdown, all right? The division is 30% goes to A, that is department X, 30% goes to A, 50 to B, and 20% to Y. Then for X, 10%, or for department Y, they send 10% to X, they share 10% to X. They also share 10% to B and the 80% to A. Consolidating these, you have 100%. So now the question of the day is, how are we using this? We are using the first approach. The first approach is where you do the reciprocal services. And what we mean by ignoring reciprocal services, we're trying to say this department, a service department, is not sharing to any service department. You have not gotten this. We're trying to say when you're doing the apportionment now, the reapportionment, you don't get the cost from this service department and share some of the cost to another service department. No. Okay. You just assume that these departments are not sharing services amongst each other. So there is nothing like that. So now let's continue from there. So starting from department number what? We could start with department. These are the totals first, right? Let's allocate X. How much are we allocating for X? It's 10,000, right? This is the total. We want this 10,000 from X. So you have to slow down here now. So for people to get you clear. Okay. For you to allocate this 10,000, to reapportion this 10,000, you have to remove it from X, department X, and let it go to department B and A. Not to department Y. Remember, we have said we are ignoring reciprocal services. You're not getting the cost. This 10 again, share it to Y. This is what we have said. So now, how are we allocating the 10? Listen carefully. The division is we are putting a negative of this 10 because we are deducting everything from X. And then how are we sharing it to department A and B? Listen carefully. Department A, when you're sharing X according to the data that we have, we are supposed to put 30, right? It's supposed to be 30. Right. It is supposed to be 30. So how are we going to do it? Since we are not sending anything to Y, you just say 30% divided by, you just add these two. We assume 20 is not there, so just say 50 plus 30, that is 80. So say 30 over 80 multiplied by 10,000. What do you find? You can do your math. 30 divided by 80, then multiplied by 10,000. What do you find?
3,750.
Yeah. So this is how you find this. This is how much you put this side. Then when you want to go for B, what is on B is 50, right? So it will be 50 divided by 80. Not look, we're not saying over 100. Why? Because this 20 has been ignored. It's not part of the conversation. We are dealing with the non-reciprocating departments. They are not reciprocating. So that's why we have just dealt with these departments, two of them. So 50 over 80 multiplied by 10,000. What do you get? Obviously, you should be able to get 6,250, right? So this 10,000 is done. It has all been reapportioned. Okay? And you, after doing this reapportionment, what you will notice is that now in department X, there is nothing. Okay. Let's go to B. How much are we allocating from B? Oh, sorry, from Y? It's 8,000, right? So you get to deduct the entire 80,000 because we are reallocating this 80,000. Now listen. According to the basis of apportionment that we have, 10% is supposed to go to X. Now listen. We said that these departments are not sharing services. That's the first assumption we're making. So for that reason, we will not get the 10% and give it to what? To X, no. So just deal with the production departments. So to see how much goes to A, we'll just say 80 divided by the total of A and B, which is the 80 plus 10, giving us 90, multiplied by, how much are we allocating? 80,000. How much goes to A? How much should go to A?
7,111.
Yeah. So this is the same one. Then for Department Y, obviously you say, Department B, you say 10 divided by 90 multiplied by, the same 80,000. You should be able to get 889. So then that entails that we have remained with nothing in Department Y, right? As well. There's nothing because everything that was in Department Y has been shared. So what you have seen now is what I was saying. All the cost has gone to the production departments. And you remain with zero costs in the service centers. This process that we are doing is called the process of reapportionment. It is quite important for you to determine, the basis of apportionment. You will need this. Any question on this one? Is there any question? Anyone can ask the question if they have any question. Hello? Okay. Can you hear me? Can you see the screen? We get to move on if you are fine. Yeah, you are able to hear me. You can see the screen.
Yes, sir. Can I?
All right.
Can I ask
Go
something,
ahead.
sir? Yes, sir. I've noticed that on top there on the overhead cost, if you add for Department A, B, X, and Y, the total is going to 37,000. So after you are done with the reapportionment, if you were to add 20,000 plus 16, is it always the case that it should add up to the same 38,000 like it is there on
Yeah, basically it's supposed to add to the same. Why? Because it's the same cost. You have not really taken the cost anywhere. You have just shared the cost to Department A and B. So when you consolidate these, they should give you the same figure, ideally. It's giving you something different?
Not really, because like on the 7,111, it was 0.11111, something like that. So is it like they just rounded it off? Is it like allowed to round it
yeah.
off
Basically, you just round it up, Yeah, those rounding up errors, basically. That's that. Nothing much.
Okay, thank you, sir.
No, you're welcome. Then, thank you so much for the question. And now we use the elimination method. How is it used in the process of reapportionment? Now, this one is quite interesting. About elimination method, as the name itself is suggestive, when you allocate or when you apportion for this department, then you forget about that department. No more apportionment of anything to that department. You have not heard this. Let me repeat. Once you deal with a department, a service department, later on or in the second stage or in the later stage, you should not give any cost to that department as long as that department has already given out. I think that's the simplest language you can use. If the department has already given out, it doesn't need to give anything again. All right. Let's go on. Elimination method. So let's start with Department X again. If you check Department number X is allocating, is losing 10,000 to these other departments, right? It's sharing to these other departments. Now, this time around, we are assuming reciprocating of services, which means that this 10,000 shall be shared to Department what? B, A, and also another or the fellow service center, which is Y. You get what I mean, eh? should also share to Y now this time around. That's what the message is all about. But what are the basis of apportionment? Basically, we saw that to A should be 30%, 50% to B, and 20% to Y, right? That is what we saw in the previous slide. We are still using the same basis. So what we are going to do now, this 10,000, we're going to share it. To A, if you want to take to A, you just say 30 divided by, now the total is 100, isn't it? Because we're adding 30 plus 50 plus 20 of the other department. 30 over 100 divided by 10,000, right? And what do you find?
3,000.
Yeah, you find 3,000 for A. Then department B, you got to put 50,000 or 50% of 100. That gives us, that times 10,000, giving us 5,000, right? Then nothing is being reallocated to X because, yeah, we are dealing with department X. So then we go to Y. 20% is going to Y. You say 20 over 100 times 10,000. That gives you 2,000. Okay. So we've allocated something to a service department now from the other service department. Now, listen carefully. Once you have dealt with the X, elimination method suggests that we are done with X. You deal with your X, then that's that. Don't go back and deal with the X again. So now, what you're trying to do is you're going to go to department number Y and do the allocation from there, or the apportionment. So you will consolidate what we have, the 8,000 we had plus the 2,000 we have received from department X. Then you have 10,000. Now, I'm emphasizing this is just coincidental. It's just by coincidence that these figures are the same. It's not always that they will be the same. Just pick the message that the cost that has come from this side is allocated this other department, then you add these, okay? When you add these, you see that the total now is 10,000. Whatever the total will be, that is how much you're going to be, reapportioning. So in our case, we are reapportioning a 10,000 from Y now. So now, how do you reapportion the 10,000? There are bases of apportionments that we are given, right? We are given basis of apportionment as the 80% to 10% to 10 again, right? Now, listen, we are not going to allocate, or we're not going to apportion anything to X. Why? Because we have already dealt with X. X has already given. So once X gives, elimination method suggests that we don't have to give any more cost to X. So we don't give any more cost to X, then we'll cancel this X, this 10% which goes to X is no longer considered. So we're just dealing with these two departments. So you shall have for department A, 80 divided by 90. Obviously, you know where the 90 is coming from. You consolidate 80 plus 10% and you multiply by 10,000. And when you do that computation, what do you find?
$10,000.
Find 10,000. You can try to do it again. 80 divided by 90.
889.
All right, 8,889. And again, when you do 10%, 10% of the same, you should be able to get 1,111. And by that time, you find that you'd have finished, allocating everything, doing the apportionment from department X and Y. Nothing has remained. You remain with just a 0, right? On X is 0 and on Y is 0 as well. So all the costs, the message we are sending across is that all the costs has finally found itself in the production centers using these various, methods of reapportionment. Any questions? We've dealt with the direct method, right? We've also dealt with the elimination method. We have remained with the continuous allotment method. That's the last one. Is there any questions so far before we deal with the last one, and then you should be fine on this conversation? Questions? All right, assuming that the silence means all is well, then we can proceed from here. Let's proceed. Now we have a continuous allotment method, which is also called the repeated distribution method of apportionment. This, you have to pay attention to it. So the message now that we are sending is the departments are now sharing costs. And we are not using elimination method where once the department shares, you forget about it. No. You will see that now, even if this department had already shared, then again, it will be able to receive something from the other department. You will see that. And again, this department shares, it will also share to the other department. It's not like in the elimination. In the elimination, once the department shares, then we are done with that department, right? So let's get started again. And we have these overhead costs. Which one do you want us to start with? We can start with the X as well. We are still allocating 10,000, right? Now, this 10,000, this is different from direct method or elimination method. In the direct method, you were not going to get this 10,000 and share it to the other service department, isn't it? No sharing of the cost to the service department. That is in the direct method. In the elimination method, we can still share to the other department, but we should forget about that department that has shared already. Okay. What about this one? This one is quite different. We are allocating the 10,000. We are doing the apportionment of the 10,000. Now the 10,000 can be shared in 3 departments. And the ratios we have is 30, 50, and 20 to Y, right? So let's do the sharing. How is it done? For A, we are going to say 30 divided by what? By 100, right? Times the 10,000. And that gives us 3,000 to A, right? When you go to department B, you just say 50 over 100 times 10,000 gives us 5,000. And to department Y, we say 20% over 100 times 10,000 giving us 2,000, right? Observe that X is not allocating anything to herself this time around. No, first to other departments. Have we, settled this up to here so far? I want us to settle these steps one by one. Are we good up to that stage? Anyone with a question, can you hear me clear? Okay. Now we go to another department. Department what? Y now. When you go to Y, I told you you have to add these. And the total you have is 10,000. You will be allocating, you'll be distributing 10,000. And in what ratios are you distributing the 10,000 to other departments? We said it is 80%, 10% for B, another 10% for what? For X. So what is 80% of, that? So you say 80 over 100, the total is 100, times 10% is 80,000, right? So 8,000 is given to A. Then the next one will be 10%. You want 10% of 10,000, which is basically 1,000. So to B, you have 10,000. Now observe that Department X is not let scot-free. We're not just excusing it like that. This time around, we are also going to apportion some cost. We'll give some cost to X, right? Why now? At what basis is 10%? So you do another 10% to this. We have 1,000 going to X. Okay. Have you seen that at first, Department X had already, distributed everything it had, no cost. But again, it has received some cost from Y. Okay. So what are we going to do? We go now back to X. X has 1,000. This 1,000 should not be here. It has to find itself into one of the into the production centers. So we need to allocate this 1,000 again. We need to distribute the 1,000 from X. All right. What are the basis of apportionment? We go back. It is a 3, 30%, 50%. That is how X is sharing. 30, 50, and what? And 10, right? No, and 20. So 30 for A over 100 times 1,000. What do you get? You get 300, yeah? Goes to A. Then 50 over 100. That is for B. Times 10, it gives us 50. Or it gives us 500. Then Department X is getting 20%. So you say 20% over 100 times 1,000. That gives you 200. So the 10,000 has finally been shared. Or the 1,000 has finally been shared or distributed like that. Are we good up to there? This is the repeated distribution method or the continuous allotment method. You are getting better. Now, observe that in Y we had nothing, right, at first, because we had already distributed the 10,000. But what has happened is that now Y has received some cost from X. It has received the 200. This 200 should not be in this Y because Y is a service department. So you got to distribute the 200. At what basis now? This is Y. Department Y distributes in the bases are 80%, 10%, and 10. So 80% goes to A. So you say 80 over 100 times 200. How much is that? If you're doing the right thing, you should find 160, right? So 160 goes to A. Then you say 10 over 100, that is for B, times 200 gives you 20, and the 20 to this other department X. Okay? Now, you've seen this 20 which is in X. X is a service center again. We don't need the 20 there again because it's a department, it's a service department there. It should be distributed again. So we are distributing the 20. You've seen what you're doing? This is X. And X distributes at what basis? Is 30%, 50%, and 20% Y. So you say 30% over 100 times what? Times the 20. That should give you 6, right? Should be able to get 6. Then you say 50% over 100 times 20, that is just 10. And then 20% over 100 times 20 gives us 4, just 4. Now that 4 go to X to Y. Okay? That goes to Y. Now this 4 should not be on Y. The reason is because Y is a service center. We have already said that we don't need costs in the service center. So that's why we'll go ahead and do the reapportionment of Y again. This 4. At what basis? What basis are we using to reallocate for? It is 80 to what? to 10 and to 10. So you say 80 over, 100 times 4. What is the 4% of, what is the 80% of 4? What is the 80% of 4? You're not punching your calculator. 80% of 4?
3.2.
Yes, 3.2. Yes, somewhere there, 3 point something. Now, you know that what will remain again, the 10% will be maybe 0 point something. You get what I mean? Then you can't start doing 0 point something, 5% or 80% of 0 point something. It keep on going, it will be 0, 0, 0, 0, 0 something. So as long as the numbers start reducing to as low as 1, please, you can just get the whole cost. That's how we had to put just get the whole cost. It's negligible, it's a small number. Put it into A or B, just like that. So A takes so much, so we have just given everything to A. And that is how we are done with the allocation. Then you consolidate, add everything. You will see that Department X and Y shall have zeros. Then Department A and B will bear the costs. So that is the message which was being communicated. Any questions? That is using continuous allotment method. So it will keep on reducing. Have you seen that? It keeps on reducing until it becomes very small, negligible figures. Then at that point, you can stop. Right? Okay. Now, yeah, we'll talk about the basis of apportionment, the absorption rates in the next conversation. This should be too much now for you.